Constantinople, the queen of cities. For 1,000 years, it was the center of the world, the beating heart of an empire that refused to die. But by the year 1337, the gold has been scrapped from the domes, and the new Rome has become a graveyard of its own glory. We often think of the fall of an empire as a sudden crash, a single day of fire and blood. But for the Byzantines, death was a slow, agonizing process that lasted 2 centuries. Everything begins and ends with the Fourth Crusade. In 1204, the Latin West broke the spine of the Roman world and sacked the Queen of Cities. And as the Byzantine territories shrank year after year, a final Palaiologan renaissance would allow the phoenix to shine brightly as the sun set on the dying empire. Today, we'll explore the anatomy of this decline, from the mirage of the Reconquest to the great civil wars that invited the enemy into the palace. We will see how an empire, drained of its blood by Italian bankers and Slavic Tsar, chose to debate the nature of divine light while the world burned around it. But could it have been different? Europa Universalis V allows a wide range of possibilities, and we'll see how you can manage to save the empire from its doom. This is the story of the end of the Romans. April 1204. For over a millennium, Constantinople stood as the queen of cities, an impregnable bastion of Roman legacy and Orthodox faith. But when the dust settled on the Fourth Crusade, the queen was a hollowed-out corpse. Contemporary writers called it a cosmic cataclysm. By losing their capital to fellow Christians, the Byzantines lost their identity. The deep scars of this betrayal would poison relations between East and West for centuries, making any future attempts at religious union dead on arrival. 1204 cast a long, dark shadow, a shadow that would loom over every emperor until the final fall in 1453. And in the wake of the flames, the empire shattered into a myriad of rival states. The Crusaders wasted no time. On May 16, 1204, Baldwin of Flanders was crowned in Hagia Sophia. He wore the imperial purple. He sat on the throne, but he lacked the one thing that mattered: legitimacy. The arrogance of the Latin proved to be their undoing. By snubbing the Bulgarian Tsar Kaloyan, they invited disaster. In 1205, at the Battle of Adrianopolis, the Bulgarian forces crushed the Latin army. The flower of Western chivalry lay dead in the mud, and Emperor Baldwin himself was dragged into captivity. The Latin Empire was decapitated before it had even learned to walk. This weakness opened the door for 3 Greek leaders to claim the mantle of Rome. In the east, the Comneni established a Rome state at Trebizond, looking toward the Black Sea. In the west, the Dukas clan planted a flag in Epirus, turning the rugged mountain of the Adriatic into a new power base. And in Anatolia, the Empire of Nicaea, led by Theodore Lascaris, would become the true successor, the empire in exile, waiting for its moment to strike back. For decades, these 3 states competed to pick the bones of the old empire. Epirus, under Theodore Dukas, reached a peak of power, even crowning its own emperor in 1227. But in the rush to seize Constantinople, the rulers of Epirus made a fatal mistake. They blinded themselves to the threat of the Bulgarian Tsar, Ivan Asen II. At the Battle of Klokotnica in 1230, the Emperor dream was shattered. Meanwhile, in Asia Minor, Nicaea was playing a longer game. Under the brilliant administration of John III Vatatzes, Nicaea thrived. Vatatzes was the architect of a recovery that history often overlooks. While his rivals fought over prestige, he built a robust economy, fortified his borders, and navigated the geopolitical storm of the Mongol invasions. When the Mongols pulverized the Seljuk at the Battle of Kozedag in 1243, the threat of Nice's eastern flank vanished and the roads to the Balkans was wide open. By 1261, the Latin Empire was a ghost of its former self, clinging to a ruin and surviving only because its enemies, the Bulgarian and the Niceans, were busy fighting each other. The recovery of Constantinople, when it finally came, was almost underwhelming. It wasn't the result of a ground-sweeping siege or a massive battle in front of the walls. It was almost an accident. In July, a small Nicene force under General Alexios Strategopoulos was simply out on patrol. They discovered that the Venetian fleet, the city's only real protection, had sailed away. With the help of the local Greek population, who opened the postern gates, the Niceans slipped into the city like ghosts. The Latin emperor fled in a panic, leaving the imperial regalia behind. On August 15th, 1261, Michael VIII Palaiologos entered the city as a new Constantine. But the air in Constantinople was heavy. Not everyone celebrated, as some courtiers whispered with cold, clear-eyed realism. Like the contemporary writer Georgios Pakimeris said, «Όταν ημετέραν κέραν, tia imin etireti, poias ara imartomen amartias, ostezin ke to safta orankaka, udenun etigristan episinexestin, epiromei palin tis poleos epivenusin». The city was ruined, depopulated, and impossible to defend. By retaking it, Byzantium had stepped back into the main stage of history, but they had also walked directly into the path of the coming storm. "1261 marked a beginning, but also a slow-burning end. While Michael VIII Palaiologos succeeded in reuniting the fractured Greek states, a deeper rot remained. The political fragmentation triggered by the Fourth Crusade didn't vanish. It simply went underground, waiting for the mid-14th century to explode. Michael VIII ruled with a singular obsession, preventing a second Latin conquest. He faced a transformed Europe. The Kingdom of France, England, and Castile has risen to formidable power. In the Balkans, Serbians and Bulgarians' independence was a settled fact. To the east, the old world had vanished. The Mongol Ilkhanate had shattered the Seljuk Turks, leaving a vacuum where desperate new powers, like the Ottoman Emirate, began to take root. To survive this, Byzantium required an emperor who knew how to play the Game of Thrones and win. Under Michael, Byzantium briefly regained its status as a global player. He repaired the Great Wall, rebuilt the fleet, and launched campaigns to reclaim lost territories. But his greatest threat wore a Sicilian crown. Charles of Anjou, the brother of the French king, Charles sought to restore the Latin Empire by force. To neutralize these threats, Michael played his most dangerous card, the union of the churches. At the Council of Lyon in 1274, he offered the Pope the one thing Rome craved, the submission of the Orthodox Church. He even proposed a grand crusade to reclaim Asia Minor from the Turks, echoing the strategy of Alexios Komnenos 2 centuries prior. But Michael's brilliance was his undoing. At home, the union was seen as a spiritual betrayal. His own family turned against him. When his protector, the Pope Gregory X, died, Michael found himself isolated. By 1281, a new French Pope excommunicated him, and a massive coalition of Venetian, Serbs, Bulgarian, and Angevin prepared to strike Constantinople. Then, Michael proved his genius. Through a web of secret gold and Aragonese alliances, he fueled a bloody uprising in Sicily, known as the Sicilian Vespers. On the 30th of March 1282, the Angevin power collapsed in a night of massacre. The invasion was averted, but the cost was the soul of the empire. Michael died a pariah, so hated for his religious politics that his own son couldn't even give him a proper Christian burial by fear of the religious power in Constantinople. Andronicus II inherited his father's debts, but none of his talent. Seeking to balance the catastrophic budgets, he made a fateful choice. He abolished the imperial navy. He outsourced the empire's defense to the Venetian and the Genoese, trading sovereignty for temporary fiscal relief. Predictably, the Italians soon treated the empire as their personal battlefield. While Andronicus focused on the west, the east caught fire. On the 27th of July 1302, a minor warlord named Osman defeated a Byzantine force near Nicomedia. This victory allowed the young Ottoman Beylik to flood into Bithynia. Desperate, Andronicus II hired the Catalan Company, fearsome, unpredictable mercenaries from Catalonia. Of course, they won battle against the Turks, but they also pillaged the empire they were meant to protect, eventually carving out their own duchy in Athens. By 1320, the aging Andronicus II finally realized his mistake and began rebuilding the army. But fate intervened in a horrific family drama. His grandson, Andronicus III, accidentally had his own brother killed during a nightly misunderstanding. The elder emperor disinherited his grandson, sparking a 7-year civil war. And while the Palai Logoi fought over the crown, the empire's border evaporated. When the younger Andronicus III finally triumphed in 1328, he tried to change the course of history. He was a warrior emperor who led from the front, but in some places, it was already too late. His defeat at the Battle of Pelekanon against Orhan and the Ottoman effectively ended Byzantine Anatolia. Only the city of Philadelphia remained, an isolated island of Greek rule in the Turkish Sea. Despite the disaster in the east, Andronicus III found success in the west. By 1340, he had reclaimed Epirus and Thessaly, making the Balkans Byzantine once more. It looked, on paper, like a restoration. But the foundation of this restoration was hollow. To pay for these wars, the emperor had turned the pronoia, the military land grants, into hereditary estates, creating a powerful, independent landed aristocracy. He had replaced a standing navy with foreign allies and professional soldiers with unpredictable mercenaries. And when Andronicus III died suddenly in 1341, he left behind a child and a treasury full of secrets. The civil war that followed between the regency and the ambitious Joannes Cantacuzenos would be the final blow. The restoration had ended and the long, agonizing twilight of Byzantium had begun. When Andronicus III died at the age of 45, he left behind a vacuum that would consume the Roman world. Unlike his predecessor, he had failed to secure the succession. His son, John V, was a mere child of 5, uncrowned and vulnerable. Two giants rose to claim the void. On one side, Joannes Cantacuzenos, the late emperor's closest friend, and the wealthiest landowner in the state. On the other, a formidable palace coup orchestrated by the Empress Mother, Anne de Savoie, and the ambitious populist leader Alexios Apokaukos. Note that we view this conflict through a clouded lens. Our primary sources are the memoirs of the protagonists themselves, Nicephorus Gregoras and Ioannes Cantacuzénos. Both write with the heavy bias of men trying to justify their own rules in a catastrophe. The civil war mobilized all the population. Cantacuzénos represented the landed aristocracy, the great masters of the provinces. Apokaukos, however, mobilized the urban classes and the disenfranchised of the cities. In Thessaloniki, this social friction ignited the revolt of the Zealots. For 7 years, this radical faction seized control of the empire's second city, establishing a revolutionary commune that defied both the palace and the aristocracy. It was a symptom of a state that could no longer protect its own, where the poor sought salvation in radicalism, while the rich sought it in betrayal. With the imperial treasury empty, both factions turned to their neighbors, effectively auctioning off the empire's future. Cantacuzénos first sought refuge with the Serbian king, Stefan Dušan. Dušan played the double game, supporting the civil war just long enough to seize Byzantine lands for himself, before switching sides. When Dušan betrayed him, Cantacuzénos reached further east, calling upon Umur, the emir of Aydin, to ferry Turkish troops into Thrace. In Constantinople, Empress Anne was equally desperate. She pawned the Byzantine crown jewel to Venice for a mere 30,000 ducats, gems that would never be redeemed. She reached out to the Pope and even summoned Turkish mercenaries from Saruhan. But the most faithful deal was struck by Cantacuzénos. To secure the support of the Ottoman emir, Orhan, he offered his own daughter, Theodora, in marriage. The price of the throne was the literal blood of the imperial family, given to a power that would soon become Byzantium's doom. By 1345, the momentum shifted. Alexios Apokaukos was captured and decapitated by the very aristocrats he had tried to suppress. Inside Constantinople, the omens were dire. In 1346, a massive earthquake caused the great dome of Hagia Sophia to collapse, a terrifying symbol for a population already broken by war and the looming shadow of the Black Death. In February 1347, Cantacuzénos' supporters opened a postern gate. He entered the capital with 1,000 men, ending effectively the war the next morning. The agreement was a bitter compromise for the Empress Mother. John V and Ioannes VI would rule as co-emperors, but the elder Cantacuzénos would hold the true reins of power for at least a decade. But what remained to rule? While the Greeks were busy fighting, their neighbors were carving the empire. Stefan Dušan now styled himself Emperor of the Serbs and the Romans, having conquered Albania and Macedonia. The Bulgarian had seized Philippopolis, and the Tsar declared himself Emperor of the Bulgarian and the Greeks, while the Genoese took back some islands in the Aegean. The Civil War of 1341 was the final fracture. Byzantium emerged from the conflict as a collection of city-states and fortresses, impoverished, depopulated, and permanently host to the Turkish armies that now knew the way to the Golden Gate by heart. History tells us that Byzantium was destined to fall. But in Europa Universalis V, destiny becomes a choice. your choice. When you begin your journey in 1337, the empire is already on the brink of collapse, as you start with a disaster, the fate of the Phoenix. This event reflects the dark reality of the mid-14th century. Your finances are depleted, your legitimacy is in the freefall, and your neighbors are readying their weapons. This systemic collapse is paired with the War of Succession, recreating the nightmare of the 1340s that we just covered a few minutes ago. To survive, you must navigate a Balkan political landscape that is as fragile as glass, and an Anatolian frontier that is already beginning to burn. To end the fate of the Phoenix and secure the future of the empire, you must achieve two main goals. First, you must halt the rise of the Turks event. This requires ensuring that no Turkish Sultan nation holds more than 100 locations in Anatolia. Easier said than done when you're facing the Ottomans. Second, you must reclaim your status as a great power. This means either controlling 150 locations, directly or through subjects, or surviving the next 60 years until the dawn of the 15th century in 1401. Until then, every decision is a gamble for the life of the empire. All through this crisis, you have access to 7 unique actions, each echoing the desperate maneuvers of Michael VIII and his successors. First, you may petition the Pope for gold, provided you are not his rival. Also, like Andronicus II, you can invite Italian city-states to provide ships and sailors. But beware, the trade privileges they demand in return may eventually strangle your own economy. You can also improve relations with Western neighbors by hosting their Catholic envoy, though this risks infuriating your own Orthodox population. But deepening ties with a specific Italian state allows you to invite an influential advisor to your court, bringing Western expertise to a crumbling Eastern administration. With the action Summon the Patriarchate, you can rally fellow Orthodox rulers to your side in any war against an enemy of a different faith. Then comes one of the most important decisions: the army reform. Once every decade, you can invest gold and legitimacy into a fundamental restructuring of one part of the Byzantine military. Doing this a few times will allow you to have a stronger army at the end of the disaster. And finally, you can patronize the monasteries. By investing in the church, you boost local prosperity and satisfy the religious fervor of the common people. But as you struggle to keep the Phoenix alive, history will come knocking. You will face the same dilemmas that broke the Palai Logoi with a wide range of historical events. Will you sell the imperial crown jewels to fund a desperate campaign? How will you respond when a massive earthquake shatters the wall of Constantinople? Finally, can you prevent the Genoese from seizing the vital port of Chios? Whether you focus on relentless reconquest or a methodical cleansing of the imperial ledgers to escape the death spiral, the game provides the tools to rewrite the tragedy. Once the fire of the disaster is extinguished, the direction of the empire is entirely yours to command. You might choose to embrace the empire's shifting identity, focusing on its Greek roots, perhaps even going so far as to revive the ancient polytheistic tradition. Or you can look west and embrace the full weight of the Roman legacy, pushing back into Italy and North Africa to restore the Mare Nostrum. The path from 1337 is paved with ruin. But for the first time in 500 years, the final chapter of the Roman Empire is entirely yours to write. In 1453, the walls of Constantinople will finally crumble under the weight of Ottoman cannons. To the world, it will be the end of an era. To the survivors, it was the death of Rome. But history is rarely a straight line. As we've seen, the true collapse didn't happen on Tuesday. It happened a century earlier, in the tax offices of Galata, in the burning fields of the 1341 civil war, and in the hearts of emperors who traded their daughters for a few months of borrowed power. Yet, Byzantium's long goodbye gave the world something unexpected. By turning inward, by rediscovering their Hellenic roots during their darkest hour, the Palaiologan scholars allowed the oldest Western empire to shine one last time. And as the empire took its last breath, its spirit was already crossing the Adriatic, igniting the flames of the Italian Renaissance. Through the lens of Europa Universalis V, we step into the shoes of those final Romans. We are given the chance to fix the broken economy, to silence the religious schism, and to prove that 1337 was only the new beginning. Can you defy the imperial decay? Can you save the Queen of Cities? Or is some history simply meant to be written in blood? The throne is empty. The choice is yours.